Hey guys, tonight we're going to melt into one of the slowest moving, most luxuriously pointless corners of world history. You're stepping into the sun-drenched, sandalwood-scented inner chambers of the Mughal Empire, not to watch battles, not to discuss imperial decrees, but to watch grown men in jewel slippers spend entire afternoons doing almost nothing except smelling mangoes. Yes, you heard that right. Perfumed mangoes. You sit cross-legged on an embroidered cushion that probably cost more than your apartment. The warm wind of late summer fluttering silk curtains just enough to carry in the faint smell of rosewater and grilled cardamom. Outside, ministers fret about border disputes and trade levies. Inside, you lean back on brocade pillows, watching Emperor Jahangir hold a mango like it's a sleeping kitten. His eyes are closed. He inhales. He doesn't say a word for 15 minutes. And here's the kicker: you probably won't survive this. This isn't a tale of thrilling adventure. No pirates, no assassins. Just mangoes. For hours. If you make it to the end without dozing off, you're some kind of history warrior. Because even though this stuff is truly, richly, historically documented, it's also so mellow, so absurdly indulgent, that it might as well be a bedtime lullaby. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and what time it is where you're listening. I love seeing how far this sleepy little channel reaches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk through the marble corridors of the Red Fort in Delhi, past enormous peacock-painted archways, through the heavily guarded inner court. You expect to find a council of advisors or a general plotting a campaign. Instead, you find the emperor reclined, barefoot, smiling faintly at a tray of mangoes that have been gently fanned for the last hour by a eunuch holding a feathered fan. This is how an emperor like Jahangir or Shah Jahan might spend his afternoon, not just casually enjoying a fruit platter, but engaging in what can only be described as mango meditation. He's not eating them. Not yet. No, that would be too hasty. He is inhaling them. The mangoes are laid out according to region. The sherry from the north, Alfonso from the western coastal groves, Langra from the east, and even a few exotic varieties imported from the Deccan Plateau. Each fruit is lightly dusted in rose powder. Some are chilled, others warmed to body temperature under sun-soaked linen. The emperor's court historian records none of this in the official imperial memoirs, of course. You only hear about it in passing from letters, poultry, and Strangiliarting manuals. But the evidence is overwhelming. The mango was no mere snack. It was status. It was ritual. It was art. Historians still argue whether the whole perfumed mango craze started under Akbar or if his son Jahangir took it to its perfumed peak. Some claim Akbar merely enjoyed mango lasses on hot days. Others believe he held mango tasting contests where the loser had to compose an apologetic couplet about the superiority of the winning cultivar. The most mainstream historical fact: Akbar ordered the planting of entire mango orchards near Lahore, and they were maintained by royal decree, with guards to ensure the best fruits were harvested only for imperial use. Mango production wasn't just agriculture, it was administration. There were ministers of mangoes. Well, unofficially. And here comes the fringe tidbit. Some records suggest that mango pits were dried, polished, and worn as amulets by select courtiers. Apparently, the pit of a mango that had been personally sniffed but not eaten by the emperor was believed to bring great fortune and mild digestion. You watch as one nobleman, trying to curry favor, offers a mango wrapped in silk and sandalwood shavings. The emperor accepts it with a nod, cups it in his hand, and gives it the ceremonial 3-second inhale. Then a long pause. Then a tiny smile. That's it. No decree, no promotion. Just the sweet satisfaction of having your mango approved. Occasionally, a bird call breaks the silence, or a peacock struts into the open-air garden. You're not sure if it's part of the entertainment, or just really proud of its feathers. Either way, no one disturbs the emperor when he's sniffing mangoes. It's considered sacred. There's even a rumor totally unverified that one courtier who coughed too loudly during a mango sniffing was reassigned to camel inventory for a full year. This daily ritual becomes so predictable that palace astrologers eventually begin advising the best astrological hours for mango appreciation. Mid-afternoon, when the sun is high but the shadows are long, that's the ideal time, apparently, for spiritual and fruity alignment. You feel your eyelids getting heavy. The emperor still hasn't taken a bite, neither have you. This isn't about hunger. It's about mood, fragrance, and, well, mostly just doing absolutely nothing in the most expensive way possible. But you do note the odd serenity of it all. The chaos of the outside world is drowned in the soft rustle of leaves, the tick of a golden water clock, and the gentle snores of a royal parrot who apparently has mango-induced narcolepsy. As the emperor finally lifts a slice to his lips, the tray bearers bow in perfect unison. This one, he will taste. Just one slice. Just once. You lean back, the scent of mango blossoms lingering in your nose, and you wonder not for the first time how such a slow, sleepy, sensual obsession ever made it into the history books. And that's only the beginning. You stay right there on the cushion. No need to move. The emperor certainly doesn't, because even as the sun shifts slightly, casting longer golden stripes across the marble floor, no one is talking about governance. The Persian calligrapher in the corner might be scribbling verses, but you know he's mostly just trying to rhyme pulp with divine. Outside the palace gates, messengers gallop in with urgent news, border flare-ups, grain shortages, petitions for mercy, and inside the emperor is now swirling a goblet of mango nectar with the same concentration you'd expect from someone handling liquid gold, which, to him, it basically is. You watch the imperial steward approach slowly, head bowed, with a delicate scroll in hand. Maybe, just maybe, this is serious. But no. He unrolls it and softly announces that today's temperature in the mango cellar has been recorded at a perfect 19 degrees Celsius. A low bow. Quiet retreat. Business concluded. You've entered a world where the daily responsibilities of ruling an empire come in a very distant second to the deeply spiritual art of fruit appreciation. Akbar, arguably the most capable ruler of the Mughal dynasty, who unified massive swaths of the Indian subcontinent, was famously dismissive of courtly fuss during mango season. He once skipped a military council to conduct a mango aroma duel between two rival gardeners. Yes, a duel. But instead of swords, they wielded baskets of different cultivars, and the emperor decided who won based on which one made him sigh the loudest. Mainstream historians agree on one thing: the Mughal Empire was highly organized. It had a bureaucracy so detailed officials were sometimes ranked based on how many horses they could supply in an emergency. But none of that mattered between May and July, because May to July was mango season. During those 3 months, priorities shifted. Imperial meetings were delayed due to humidity. Important nobles would mysteriously develop coughs just serious enough to require mango-scented rest cures at court. And the emperor, he'd lounge under canopy cooling himself with sandalwood mist while mangoes were brought in one at a time, each lovingly carried by someone who probably had a PhD in fruit cradling. Historians still argue whether this behavior was genuine love of mangoes or just elaborate performancy, an exaggerated display of luxury to remind everyone that if you can spend 4 hours evaluating fruit ripeness, you're obviously in control. But let's not pretend this was all quiet introspection. No, the emperor had a team. You had your slicer, your cooler, your aroma guard, your taster, your tray bearer. Each had very specific duties. The taster's job wasn't to eat the mango perch that thawed. It was to taste the mango air. They'd fan it toward their face, inhale, and give notes. Too acidic, slightly piney, hints of overripe plum. Think a Michelin inspector, but exclusively for produce. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some noblemen, desperate to impress, took to training parrots to repeat compliments about the emperor's favorite mangoes. One bird was said to have recited "No mango like yours, O son among men" 42 times before fainting from overexertion. And all this happened while the empire itself was buzzing just outside the harem walls. You'd hear faint, distant music from street festivals, the clang of blacksmiths, and the murmur of couriers announcing warfront rumors. But the mango chamber was immune. The emperor's afternoon was a sensory bubble. No noise, no stress, just juice, silk, and time. It's also said that when court artists tried to paint these serene scenes, they'd often leave the emperor's eyes slightly unfocused, as if in a trance. This wasn't accidental. It was artistic shorthand for His Majesty is currently communing with fruit. Even the pigeons seemed to understand the reverence. You swear one just landed near the emperor's pillow and bowed its head before flying off again. Coincidence? Possibly. But more likely, it's just a very well-trained bird with excellent taste in produce. And don't think for a second that this was a private indulgence. No, everyone was expected to participate in their own way. The emperor might pass a slice to a favored wife, or challenge a poet to write a couplet on the spot. Ripe as the dawn, scented like longing, your mango writhes, my eyelids are falling. Not exactly Shakespeare, but the emperor grins and waves it off. The poet gets a gold bangle, and a mango, of course. Meanwhile, the mango slicer is now crafting a tiny sculpture out of skin peels. It's a camel, or possibly a fish, you can't tell, but everyone claps politely anyway. Still, despite the silliness, there's a rhythm to it, all a very slow rhythm, like a heartbeat in a nap. The chamber gets quieter. Even the emperor blinks less. Time stretches. You think about how absurd it is, and yet how human, to create entire rituals just to pause the rush of life. Maybe it was never really about mangoes. Maybe it was about control or peace or refusing to be rushed. Or maybe the mangoes were just really that good. Eventually, a court musician appears, quietly plucking a 4-string instrument. Not to entertain, just to underline the mood, like adding a soundscape to an already dreamy, drowsy moment. It's then you realize that this isn't history written in battles or borders. This is history written in aromas. It's sticky-fingered, golden pulp, slightly too warm sensory history. And it's very, very sleepy. The emperor sighs again. You're not sure if he's finished or just moved on to the next mango tier in the ranking. Either way, no decisions are made today. Except the most important one. Does Sherry edges out Alfonso? Barely. You don't even realize how deeply you've sunk into the cushions until your elbow brushes a silver tray. It makes the faintest clink, but no one noticed, not the poet now working on his third mango haiku, not the emperor licking a spot of juice from his thumb, and certainly not the diplomat who has just entered the chamber bearing fruit. No scroll, no chest of gold coins, just a velvet-lined basket covered with muslin, warm to the touch and breathing a floral perfume. That's right. In the mule world, diplomacy sometimes smelled like overripe sunshine. You sit up just enough to peek over the basket's edge. Inside, mangoes. Not just any mangoes, carefully selected, obsessively tended, probably serenaded mangoes from the orchards of a regional governor desperate to stay on the emperor's good side. And what better way to soften the tension of, say, a rebellious tax policy or a contested succession than to present a fruit so perfect, so fragrant, so utterly golden that it makes everyone forget why they were annoyed in the first place. Mango diplomacy was real. Official or not, it became an unspoken yet heavily practiced form of negotiation. You weren't offering just food, you were offering a climate, a season, a soil, a whisper of loyalty. Mainstream historical records confirm this. Local rulers from as far as Bengal or Gujarat sent crates of mangoes as tribute, often carried by special mango messengerskis, whose entire job was to transport fruit very slowly so as not to bruise it. Some were packed with rose petals, some wrapped in mulberry paper soaked in saffron water, others enclosed in cedar boxes to subtly infuse them with woodsy notes. And what happened when the fruit was rejected? Well, let's just say one prince from the Deccan reportedly sent mangoes with a slightly sour note, and for the next 5 years, not a single member of his court was invited to Delhi during mango season. A royal snub in the juiciest sense. You glance around and realize this has created an entire class of fruit couriers, mango handlers, and aroma inspectors, a bit like sommeliers with softer hands and more silk in their wardrobe. These men were tasked with ranking diplomatic offerings not by political weight, but by fragrance complexity and pulp-to-skin ratio. The emperor now receives the velvet basket. He doesn't look at the emissary. Not yet. First, he examines the mangoes. He gently lifts one and holds it to the light. It glows. He sniffs. He nods. And only then does he acknowledge the diplomat, who breathes finally. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some particularly clever diplomats were known to send mangoes labeled with miniature poem-short verses written directly onto the skin using fine brushes and natural dyes. Your smile is the monsoon, and I the fruit it ripens. Shameless flattery, absolutely. Effective almost always. Historians still argue whether mango diplomacy ever determined the outcome of real conflicts. Some claim that during Shah Jahan's reign, an entire trade agreement with Persia was delayed until a certain orchard near Agra produced its yearly monarch mangoes, a cultivar so prized it made other fruits look like shriveled apologies. Of course, not all mango gifts were innocent. You lean closer, remembering the story of a nobleman who, upon falling out of favor, sent mangoes dusted with powdered narcotics in hopes of producing hallucinations that might tilt court politics in his favor. It failed spectacularly. He ended up planting date palms in exile, which is, frankly, a pretty sad downgrade. And yet, in these fruity negotiations, a strange serenity reigns. You'd expect tension, raised voices, maybe even bribes. Instead, it's just a lot of slow nodding and tiny sighs of mango pleasure. The emperor gestures. A slice is offered to the diplomat, who accepts it with two hands, bows slightly, and tastes. The entire room watches. There's no fork, no plate, just a bite, a pause, and a slight smile. This smile is crucial. It communicates mutual respect. Also, it gives the juice enough time to drip in exactly the right way. The poet, sensing the importance of the moment, recites on the fly. Peace tastes like pulp, sweet, slow as the river flows, mango in my hand. You have to admit, not bad. Behind the scenes, you catch a glimpse of the scribes quietly taking notes not about the mango, but about the people. How deeply did the diplomat bow? Did he reach for the second slice too quickly? Did he comment on the variety? All of this becomes soft data in the court's internal politics. It's fruit theater. It's also wildly inefficient, but deeply human. Somehow, mangoes lower the stakes, or perhaps they raise them in a strangely tender way. When you sit together, legs crossed, sharing fruit instead of accusations, your brain slips into a different rhythm, less war, more juice. A side conversation drifts to your ears. One courtier swears by the mangoes from the Konkan coast, while another insists only those grown in Lucknow's soil produce the ideal tangy finish. The argument grows louder. The emperor raises a hand not to scold, but to summon more samples. Settling fruit disputes with more fruit is very on brand here. The diplomat is still seated, wiping his fingers delicately with a silk cloth embroidered with tiny mangoes. You suspect it's part of a limited edition line gifted only to those who passed the fruit favor test. It's equal parts silly and sincere. And as the sun begins to lower, casting warm orange tones across the mango trays, you feel it again, that blend of scent and sound and slowness that turns something as simple as eating fruit into a miniature opera of politeness, politics, and pulp. The diplomat rises, mission successful, or, at the very least, mission not rejected. Behind him, servants gather the leftover peels like museum pieces. Tomorrow, they might be dried into incense, or blended into hair tonic, or strangely enough pressed into the soles of royal sandals. You're not even surprised anymore. You lie back down, head gently thudding against a silk cushion. Somewhere in the distance, a nightingale sings. The mango trays are covered, not for secrecy, but to let the scent linger just a little lounge. You drift deeper into this mango-scented dream, your body more relaxed now, limbs heavy with the sweet weight of indulgent boredom. The air feels thick and slow, like it's been strained through a golden sieve. You trail behind the courtiers as they wander out of the sun-washed tasting pavilion and into one of the strangest rooms in the palace: mango vaults. Yes, vaults, not for gold, not for jewels, for fruit. You walk through a corridor lined with heavy teakwood doors, each marked with a brass plate etched in Persian script. Behind them, mangoes organized by region, texture, scent profile, and harvest date. The scent hits you before the cool air does. It's warm honey, damp hay, something almost tropical and almost sour. It clings to the stone like memory. Mainstream historians have confirmed the mule's obsession with preservation. These vaults weren't just luxury, they were logistics. Mangoes were seasonal, after all, and emperors didn't enjoy seasonal limitations. Records from the time show that specialized underground rooms were constructed specifically to store mangoes during the off-season, complete with airflow systems designed to cool the fruit without drying it out. And the staff, oh, they had titles: Chief Custodian of Seasonal Delights, Keeper of Ripening Silences. Okay, fine, they'd not those exact titles, but roles like Ambari Beg and Dergi Bag were real. And while most ran formal gardens, a select few were assigned the task of watching over the fruit of the emperor's affection. Historians still argue whether these vaults were inspired by Persian cold chambers or borrowed from earlier Hindu monsoon granaries. Either way, they were a marvel of quiet obsession. You pass one open jar and peer inside. Nestled in it like a rare bird's egg is a single Langra mango, pale green, kissed with gold. It's surrounded by cloves and dried jasmine petals, possibly to ward off spoilage, or possibly to appease the mango gods. Hard to say. And now here's your quirky tidbit. One account claims that Emperor Shah Jahan, he of the Taj Mahal fame, once spent 30 full minutes composing a personal goodbye letter to a mango that had begun to rot. He dictated it to his scribe. It opened with, "Though your skin withers, my affection remains ripe." Romantic, sure, a little unhinged, absolutely. You watch as a team of attendants silently count mangoes, not like merchants, more like monks. They move slowly, reverently, marking tallies on parchment with the softest brushes imaginable. You're pretty sure if someone sneezes too hard, they'd lose their job. The emperor himself visits occasional winter in a rush. His bare feet make no sound on the cold stone as he wanders the aisles, sometimes trailing a hand over the jars like a curator in a museum of forgotten sweetness. He pauses at one sealed box. A tray is brought. The lid is opened. The mango inside isn't too perfect, maybe too perfect. The emperor doesn't speak. He simply closes his eyes and inhales, then walks away. No one questions him. No one eats the mango. It will be resealed and returned to storage. Maybe he's saving it for a more poetic day. You wonder what it would take to work here. Years of training in scent memory, a calm demeanor under intense olfactory pressure, an ability to detect spoilage at the level of emotional intuition. One old attendant, a man so slow-moving you're not entirely sure he's awake, spends his days gently rotating mangoes, not to preserve them, no, just to make sure they don't get too comfortable on one side. Keeps the soul even, he murmurs when asked. Above ground, the sun still burns, empires still expand and collapse, but here underground, the mangoes are safe, time is syrupy, the air is thick with potential sweetness. And there's another function for these vaults: gifting. Some of the mangoes stored here are not for eating. They're for presentation, like a diamond, but squishier. High-ranking nobles receive them as tokens of favor. Lovers receive them as declarations of longing. Once, a mango from these vaults was sent to the Shah of Iran wrapped in silk, and accompanied by a letter that read, "May this fruit carry with it the aroma of peace." You follow a quiet trail of sandalwood smoke toward a smaller vault, more private, less gilded, the emperor's personal collection. Mangoes with names, mangoes with backstories. One came from a tree planted by his grandfather, Another from a farmer whose daughter composed a song so beautiful it made the emperor tear up. Hence, mango privileges for life. This vault is almost too quiet, even the guards outside whisper. You step in and feel like you've crossed into a sacred zone. There are fewer jars, more space. A single mango rests on a jade pedestal. You half expect it to levitate. And this is the real secret of these vaults. Not their engineering, but their emotional gravity. These are not just stores of food, they are time capsules. Each mango is a story, a memory, a moment preserved in pulp. The emperor visits, rarely. When he does, he doesn't touch anything. He just stands, breathes deeply, then leaves. It's not indulgence, it's ritual. Back upstairs, the courtiers gather again. Afternoon slips into evening, scribes finish their notes, poets file their mango verses. But the vaults below remain undisturbed, holding their fragrant secrets beneath stone and silence. You yawn, unintentionally mimicking the emperor himself, who at this very moment is reclining with a linen-wrapped mango balanced on his stomach like a sleeping cat. Your eyes start to close, your mind drifts to the vault below. You can still smell it, sweetness held hostage by time, guarded by memory. By now the sun has fully reclined behind the palace walls, stretching out its golden lens across the horizon like it, too, has just eaten too many mangoes and needs a nap. You shuffle slowly behind a group of courtiers making their way toward a marble terrace, where the first whispers of evening wind tease the tops of lush mango trees. There's a quiet thrill in the air, not for war, not for politics, but for the first tasting of the year's most anticipated cultivar. It's mango season in full swing, and the emperor's mood rises or falls like a monsoon tide depending on what the trees have produced. Out here, the mango groves are a kind of royal weather vane for emotion. If the langurs are underwhelming, expect an imperial sulk. If the alfonsos are lush and fragrant, the court might just break into spontaneous poetry. You settle beneath a carved jarka window as the emperor arrives, wrapped in linen dyed with turmeric, and lazily fanned by someone who definitely wanted to be a general. He doesn't look at the courtiers. He looks at the tray. The tray is silver. The mango is unpeeled, fresh, still wearing a sheen of morning dew, even though it's sunset. These are the first of the season, gathered by hand at dawn and inspected so thoroughly that one servant was dismissed for confusing the words ripened and ripening. You brace yourself. This is the moment where everything, the mood of the emperor, the fate of a poet's promotion, maybe even the price of pepper and go hinges on whether this mango meets the celestial standard. He picks it up. He turns it slowly. He inhales. Long pause. Then, that soft, elusive sound, a contented hum, somewhere between a sigh and the low rumble of distant thunder. The crowd relaxes. You could swear someone starts crying with relief. Mainstream historical accounts do make reference to the emperor's sensitivity to mango quality. Jahangir in particular was known for mood swings that coincided almost too perfectly with bad harvest years. And during Aurangzeb's reign, one frustrated noble wrote in a letter that the royal appetite has declined. I suspect the mangoes have disappointed, but here's your quirky tidbit. Certain astrologers were employed just to chart mango cycles, not the moon, not almonds, just fruit. If Mars was in retrograde during the first flowering, the mangoes would supposedly carry a sharpness that invited courtly arguments. Mercury in harmony, expect sweeter pulp and more generous decrees. Historians still argue whether this was sincere belief or just a convenient excuse to cancel meetings during sticky weather. And you'd think this seasonal obsession would be kept strictly among the elite, but no, even the servants knew the schedule. Tailors sewed mango-themed embroidery onto robes this time of year. Musicians composed ripening ragas, meant to be performed at precisely the hour mangoes were plucked from trees. In the royal kitchens, chefs were in a state of gentle panic. Mangoes from this year's harvest had to be paired with the right rice, the correct type of yogurt, the ideal temperature of clove tea. And if the emperor happened to declare a mango worthy of poetry, you could expect a dozen scribes the next morning. all pretending to casually drop mango metaphors into their work. You follow one of them, now a young poet carrying an ink-stained scroll and looking entirely too proud of a couplet that goes, "If lips were fruit, yours would drip with longing." Bold, possibly career-ending. Time will tell. But let's not forget the other side of mango season, mango anxiety. Because when your entire mood calendar depends on fruit, there's a lot riding on the whims of weather and worms. One season, a freak dust storm blew through the groves a week before harvest. The emperor was so dismayed that he reportedly refused to listen to any music for a month. The taba player had to take a second job as a bird trainer. There were even court rumors of mango sabotage accusations flung across pillows, and paltry readings about someone artificially ripening fruit to gain favor early. One scandal involved tampering with mango scent using rose oil, leading to a royal sniff test that lasted nearly an hour. The culprit, no one knows, but he was never seen again, possibly reassigned to count pebbles in a remote riverbed. You lean closer as one of the royal gardeners explains very seriously that a proper Alfonso must never be chilled before being introduced to the emperor. The sudden temperature change offends the fruit's dignity, he whispers. And what about the emperor himself? Shah Jahanis, the very same who built the Taj Mahal, was said to have postponed architectural meetings if the mango yield was delayed. Apparently, inspiration required proper hydration, and no drink compared to the fresh nectar of a mango eaten at just the right moment, just after the monsoon, just before sunset. Tonight's batch is a success. You watch the emperor offer a slice to a visiting noble from Kashmir. The noble bows and tastes. He does not immediately faint from joy, which is the bare minimum expected reaction. Instead, he murmurs, like sunlight made solid. Everyone nods solemnly. You settle into the marble terrace as the servants clear the trays. The air smells like sugar and grass, like perfume you'd never wear but somehow trust. The emperor wipes his fingers with a silk cloth, now gently stained gold. Someone lights an oil lamp. The flame flickers, reflected in the pool beside you, and for a moment it looks like the mango trees are glowing from within. Out in the orchard, the last rays of sun slide over branches heavy with fruit. Some will be plucked tomorrow, others left to ripen to a state of pure sweetness, kind that might inspire a blessing or start a scandal. You're not even sure which would be more fun. But for tonight, there's peace, because the mangoes have pleased the emperor. And in this empire, that's enough. You drift along with the last of the mango-scented breeze, following the emperor as he steps into what might be the most absurdly lavish, somehow perfectly tranquil room in the entire palace. The flavor chamber. Yes, that's exactly what it's called. Or at least, what the gossiping servants call it behind heavy doors and behind heavier eyelids. Here, there are no debates, no ministers, no maps of territories or numbers of horses. This room is dedicated purely to the exploration of mango nuance, a task that sounds ridiculous until you realize the emperor has spent nearly 3 hours today without once raising his voice, ranking 15 different mangoes on softness alone. The walls are marble, inlaid with semi-precious stones that swirl in floral motifs, almost mimicking the curling stems of mango leaves. Above, a fresco depicts a reclining Georgia surrounded by floating mangoes in a blue sky, a scene that is definitely based on someone's very indulgent dream. The room is dim, lit by low-hanging lanterns shaded with silk dyed the color of ripe fruit. Every flicker of flame feels like it ripens the air around you. In the center, a tasting table shaped like a lotus blossom, with wide petals used to lay out slices in specific orders. The outer petals are for sprightly pulp, the center for reverent richness. You are not making this up. Someone wrote those words on a placard in sandalwood ink. Mainstream historical accounts do record that specialized tasting rituals took place in court, particularly under Jahangir and Shah Jahan. These were not haphazard indulgences, but highly choreographed experiences. Flavor, texture, fragrance, even the weight of the slice were evaluated. A mango could win a region funding or doom it to budget cuts. Today's exercise, tactile variation. That means you're going to be sitting here, listening to a royal advisor whisper words like unctuous, resinous, and hinting at sherbet while the emperor nods in barely perceptible approval. Historians still argue whether these flavor sessions were rooted in Persian culinary traditions, or if they emerged as their own mule practice, part food science, part sacred ceremony. Some say they stem from Ayurvedic beliefs, others claim it's just the world's most elegant version of what if we made fruit the main character. And now for your quirky tidbit. At one point, flavor lexicons were supposedly kept in the imperial library. Tiny leather-bound books with names like the 5 Textures of Langro or Sonnet to Syrupy Sourness. While no physical copies have survived, letters between courtiers suggest that reading one aloud before a tasting was considered excellent manners. You sit beside a junior poet, nervously clutching his mango forkies. That's a thing. It's gold with 2 short prongs and an ivory handle carved to look like a tiny leaf. He's been given the honor of describing today's 3rd mango, an especially round specimen from the Sultanpur groves. He clears his throat soft, but with a backbone, he says, immediately regretting it. The emperor raises an eyebrow. You wince. A silence falls so thick it could be sliced like mango. Fortunately, the royal taster steps in to rescue the mood, offering a dignified nod and murmuring, "Indeed, Your Majesty." It exhibits resolve. Like the fruit of a tree that has withstood storms, everyone exhales. You lean in closer to the table and notice each slice has been fanned slightly apart from the next so the air can circulate between them, allowing full personality expression. It's mango as opera, mango as perfume, mango as philosophy. Servants stand ready with rosewater-scented cloths for finger dabbing, cardamom water for palate cleansing, and a thick scroll for taking notes on the emperor's comments, each of which is treated like an imperial decree. If he says, "This one tastes like monsoon earth," then by tomorrow morning, a poet will have turned it into a 14-verse epic, and a painter will have tried to depict earth but sweet on parchment. One slice in particular seems to transfix the emperor. He takes to bites, too. This is extremely rare. Everyone leans forward, just enough to show interest without committing treason. Then, quietly, he says, "It begins like honey, ends like grief." You want to laugh, but you also kind of understand. It's that kind of mango. The flavor chamber has no clocks. Time bends around taste, but your body knows hours are passing. Your shoulders slump a little further, your head dips. Every few minutes, someone makes a sound of approval so delicate you'd think they were sipping from a crystal flute. Somewhere, a scribe scribbles, "Note the aftertaste of longing." It's unclear if that's about the mango or the courtier he's been secretly pining after, but either way it goes into the record. You hear another attendant murmur, "This one speaks of dusk." And now you're just along for the ride. Mango tasting has become poetry therapy with light snacks. Every so often, someone brings out a control mango, a standard specimen from the emperor's personal favorite tree. It's meant to recalibrate the senses, but no one actually enjoys it. It's too familiar, too obedient. The emperor doesn't even look at it. He's hunting for wildness, for surprise, for a slice that tells him something he didn't know about himself. Here's the part they don't tell you in the school textbooks. While other empires were busy carving borders and plotting coups, the mules were ranking mangoes based on emotional depth. They weren't ruling a nation. They were curating a vibe. Eventually, the emperor waves a hand, the trays are cleared, the candles are lowered, the silence lingers, as if even the walls need time to process what just happened. You rise, groggy but oddly moved. Mango fatigue is real. You smell like stone fruit and sandalwood, and your dreams tonight are probably going to taste like syrup. Behind you, a poet tucks away his scroll. He's just written the words, "A mango so rich, it left me poor." And honestly, you get it. You shuffle out of the flavor chamber feeling like your entire body has turned to pulp. Not unpleasantly, though it's a kind of spiritual softness, as if your bones have agreed to suspend all structure in honor of the mango. The halls are quieter now. The court musicians are playing in a minor key, and someone is delicately misting the walls with rosewater because, of course, even architecture needs to smell pretty. You trail the emperor not to a war room, not to a council, but to what you soon discover is the Mughal Empire's seasonal mango correspondence office. That's right, letters, hundreds of them, all about mangoes. Here, scribes sit cross-legged with ink-stained fingertips, hunched over scrolls that begin with phrases like "May your orchard thrive beyond your enemies," or "The mango you sent was like a whisper of dawn." This is a room where diplomacy, emotion, and fruit are bound together in calligraphy so elegant it might make a plum feel insecure. You duck into a corner and watch as a courtier dictates a letter. His Majesty was most moved by the subtle warmth of your latest offering. It recalled the memory of his youth beneath the shade of the Malta groves. In return, please accept a bolt of silk and His Excellency's personal blessing for your orchard's continued fertility. Mainstream historians do acknowledge the enormous importance of written correspondence in the Mughal administration. But what's often glossed over is just how many of those letters, especially in late spring, were entirely about mangoes. No land disputes, no taxation reforms, just passionate fruit reviews written like love poetry. And sometimes they were love poetry. A letter discovered in the archives from a princess to her cousin in Kabul reads like the first act of a romance novel. Your mangoes arrive with the blush of shame and the confidence of poets. The subtext is louder than 1,000 elephants on a parade day. Your quirky tidbit, one noble, deeply infatuated with a court dancer, used mangoes as code. He would send her different varieties, each with a hidden meaning. Langra for longing, Dasheri for desire, Banganapali for bashfulness. When she finally returned a slice of totapuri in a silk pouch, he claimed it meant she was ready to elope. Historians, however, still argue whether this was sincere coded language or just an extremely elaborate misunderstanding involving seasonal shipping delays. And the emperor himself, he was no stranger to poetic indulgence. Shah Jahan once dictated a thank you letter so tenderly worded it was mistaken for a marriage proposal. Embarrassingly, it was to a sultan he barely tolerated, who promptly sent back a crate of mangoes blushing with hope. You're trying not to laugh, but it's hard, especially as a new scribe trips over his own words while drafting a review that includes the phrase, "A mango of such stature that it humbled my ambitions." That's either profound or deeply concerning. One wall of the correspondence office is covered entirely in painted miniaturistiny illustrations of mango exchanges, couriers riding horseback with ornate baskets, rulers holding slices midair as if making an offering to the divine, a surprisingly intense depiction of Janja staring at a mango like it just insulted his ancestors. There's even an official emblem for fruit correspondence. Two mangoes crossed like sabers, with a tiny dove perched above, used exclusively for mango matters. It's embroidered onto courier satchels and etched into the wax seals of the emperor's fruity thank you notes. A senior scribe gestures for you to come closer. He's just received a fresh delivery, inside a lacquered box, for perfectly symmetrical mangoes from a distant Raja. No letter, just a silk ribbon tied in a bow. You watch as the scribe raises one brow, then mutters, bold, possibly romantic. He makes a note in the registry. Each mango is catalogued with precision, size, color, scent, origin, emotional effect. The registry reads less like a ledger and more like a diary. June 3rd mango from Malwan, expectedly floral reminded, His Majesty of rain-soaked marble. Outside, pigeons coo in rhythm, as if offering background music to the scribe's work. One bird lands beside you, pecks curiously at a discarded mango peel, then flutters away, possibly on its way to deliver a juicy breakup letter. You sink deeper into the cushions scattered around the correspondence room. These people aren't exchanging information. They're exchanging impressions, memories, desires, regrets wrapped in mango skin. There's something oddly comforting in it. In a world of swords and silk, where alliances shift like sand and power rests on unpredictable shoulders, mangoes offer something steady, honest, briefly perfect. A younger scribe tells you quietly that sometimes the emperor answers these letters himself, not with his own hand perished the thought but with carefully chosen phrases murmured to a favored calligrapher. His most recent reply, "Your mango was quiet but courageous." Some letters never arrive, either eaten by animals or intercepted by rival couriers hoping to decode mango politics. One story tells of a letter that traveled from Bengal to the court for 43 days strapped beneath a camel. By the time it arrived, the mango inside had fermented, exploded, and soaked the paper. The emperor smelled it anyway. He reportedly said, "Its ruin was poetic." Historians still debate whether that comment was sarcasm or sincere melancholy. Either way, the scribe who delivered it was promoted, possibly out of pity. The lamps flicker lower, the scrolls are rolled, the inkpot sealed. You watch the scribes yawn stretch, some even curling up right there on their parchment-strewn mats. It's clear that for at least 3 months a year, this room functions less like a postal hub and more like an aromatherapeutic dreamscape for fruit-themed emotions. And honestly, you wouldn't have it any other way. You turn on your side, the echo of mango metaphors circling your head like sleepy fireflies. Behind you, someone whispers a final phrase before drifting off. A mango unshared is a memory unformed. You nod, silently, sleepily. True. By now, the palace seems to pulse with a drowsy rhythm, like a massive, velvet-draped organism that eats poetry and exhales rose-scented breezes. You pad through a corridor lit only by oil lamps and the occasional reflection of the moon off polished marble. You've left the scrolls and scribes behind, thaw the scent of parchment, and overripe mango still clings to your clothies, and now you're moving toward the Mughal elite's favorite post-mango pastime. Lounging, but not just any lounging. Tonight, you've been invited into the inner courtyard gardens for what can only be described as the mango reclining aisle. That sacred sliver of time when no one speaks above a whisper. All shoes are optional, and the entire court dissolves into slow-moving puddles of perfumed silk and philosophical thoughts no one really intends to finish. The garden is lit by fireflies and floating lanterns. Mango trees cast long shadows across shallow pools, and peacocks wander through the grass with the kind of haughty authority that suggests they've just won a minor political appointment. There's music, soft, stringed, and sleep emanating from somewhere you can't quite see. You find a spot on a divan beside a marble bench, still warm from the day's heat, and stretch out as a servant fans you lazily with a peacock feather punka. You notice one noble reclining with such practiced elegance that you wonder if he trained for it. Another is absent-mindedly composing a haiku about mangoes and heartache, while yet another stares blankly at the moon like he's trying to memorize its exact shade. Mainstream historical records are quite clear on this. Mughal emperors, especially under Jahangir and Shah Jahan, were connoisseurs of languid leisure. Lounging wasn't laziness, it was court culture. It was status. If you looked like you were trying too hard, you were doing it wrong. And here's your quirky tidbit. One emperor reportedly employed a posture consultant whose entire job was to ensure the emperor's reclining angles were aesthetically imperial. This same consultant once critiqued a visiting noble's lounge as too effortful, resulting in a quiet but permanent social demotion. Historians still argue whether this lounging culture was inherited from Persian royal tradition or developed uniquely within the Mughal court's aesthetic bubble. Either way, it was ritualized, refined, and occasionally ridiculous. You notice a cluster of courtiers discussing the philosophy of mango enjoyment. Bouquets, of course they are. One gestures dramatically with a slice. To bite or to scoop, this is the real divide between men. The others nod solemnly. One quotes a 12th century Sufi poet who probably never wrote about mangoes but now somehow definitely did. Beside you, an elderly courtier sighs. "The fruit was overripe," he says wistfully, "but it made me feel 17 again." You don't ask questions. You simply nod because you too are beginning to understand that mangoes here are less about nutrition and more about emotional teleportation. One of the emperor's daughters reclines nearby on a swing suspended between two mango trees. She's draped in chiffon and holding a chilled goblet of mango nectar, which she sips with closed eyes like she's listening to the stars tell her secrets. A eunuch fans her with one hand and reads poetry with the other, both at half speed, as if to prevent waking the trees. There are cushions, so many cushions, embroidered with pomegranate threads, stuffed with goose down, and arranged not in sets but in moods. There's a reflective cluster, a romantically restless corner, and what someone refers to in perfect seriousness as the emotional recovery section for mangoes that didn't meet expectations. And then there's the emperor. He sits at the far end of the garden, barely visible, half ensconced in shadow and silk. He's cradling a mango as one might cradle a pet or a newborn philosophy. Not eating it, just communing with it. This isn't uncommon. In fact, a court report once described Shah Jahan holding a particularly fragrant chosa mango to his forehead for a full 5 minutes before declaring, "It hums the key of summer." No one ever figured out what he meant, but the mango was immediately promoted to ceremonial fruit status and preserved in amber oil for 6 months. It eventually disintegrated, but not before inspiring 3 miniature paintings and a lute solo. Tonight, the emperor breaks the silence with a single sentence. What is sweeter, mango, or the time we spend imagining it? Several courtiers pretend to laugh softly. One actually weeps. A scribe nearby tries to write the quote down but messes up the calligraphy and has to start over with shaking hands. You lie back further into your cushion, thinking about that. There's something strangely relaxing about a culture that invests so much thought, ritual, and poetry into what's essentially a piece of fruit. Or maybe it's exactly because it's just a fruit, ephemeral, fragile, delicious, like every moment that matters. One of the emperor's attendants offers you a slice of dried mango brushed with silver leaf. It tastes like moonlight that got drunk on sugar. You smile without meaning to. The garden is quiet now save for the sound of soft footsteps, distant water, and the gentle click of someone opening another mango box. This hour isn't for business. It isn't for decisions. It's for dissolving. You're not even entirely sure you're awake anymore. You might be dreaming of mangoes, or dreaming inside a mango, or dreaming as a mango that's about to be composed into a ghazal. Someone starts to hum a low, sleepy tune that drifts through the branches and lingers in the lantern light. Another courtier murmurs, "What if heaven is just a place where mangoes never go out of season?" You close your eyes and think, that actually sounds reasonable. You wake, or more accurately, you become slightly more aware of the rustling sound of silk and the soft creak of wooden sandals on marble. The garden is empty now except for a handful of sleepy-eyed attendants gathering up cushions and drying half-sipped goblets of mango nectar. Somewhere behind you, a tabla thuds a farewell rhythm, each beat sounding like a heartbeat from a dream you forgot. But your evening's not quite over. You follow a gentle lantern glow down a curved hallway, and suddenly you're standing at the threshold of the most exclusive experience in the mule mango universe. The private scent chamber, reserved for emperors, favored poets. And tonight you step inside and immediately understand why this room has been compared to standing inside a mango's soul. The air is warm, still, and dense, sweet in that hypnotic, perfumed way that makes you feel like your limbs are made of syrup and sleep. This is where mangoes go not to be eaten or praised, but inhaled. Their destiny is to melt into incense, mist oils, and fragrant vapors, all slowly curling through the air like invisible threads of song. Mainstream historians confirm the mule obsession with scented or perfume oil was not merely cosmetic, it was sacred, medicinal, spiritual. But during mango season, perfumers were ordered to create essences distilled specifically from fruit peels, sap, and blossom what one courtier once called the invisible nectar. Your quirky tidbit, some of these perfumers were blindfolded while they worked not for mystique, but to enhance their sense of smell. Legend says one such artisan could identify the grove a mango came from by its skin alone. Whether that's true or just an aromatic myth, no one dares question it. You settle onto a divan lined with muslin sheets and wait. A servant approaches with a brass censer filled with glowing charcoal, onto which he gently drops a cube of dried mango resin. It hisses softly, releasing a tendril of smoke that smells not like fruit exactly, but like mummery, summer fields, sun-warmed walls, your grandmother's hands. A kiss that never happened. You blink slowly, and suddenly you're 17, and wearing silk for the first time. A voice floats through the haze. Your Majesty finds this year's attar to be more playful than last. You don't know who's speaking, or to whom, or even whether playful is an approved adjective for a fruit-based vapor. But no one questions it. In this room, language dissolves like sugar. You're handed a cloth lightly dabbed with mango flower oil. It smells brighter, sharper, like a mango still clinging to its stem, reluctant to ripen. You press it to your wrist and inhale. Your heartbeat slows. Nearby, two scholars are having a half-whispered debate. One insists the scent of Desiree mangoes is best when mixed with sandalwood. The other prefers pairing Alphonsos with vetiver. Their argument is gentle, circular, more like a duet than a disagreement. Historians still argue. One of them says whether this room was originally intended for relaxation or revelation. You consider that. Is this a palace spa, a fruity shrine, a meditative tool that just happens to smell like joy? Some believe emperors came here to think, others say they came here not to think at all. It's hard to say. You feel your thoughts loosening like tangled silk threads, soft, slow, untethered. Someone begins to recite a poem. The mango ripens in silence, unseen, perfume rising like the soul of green. If it speaks, it does so through air, a sweetness floating nowhere. A lute answers, a breeze follows. There's an unspoken rule here, nothing loud, nothing literal. Even time seems to lose its grip. Candles flicker lazily, their flames swaying like they're drunk on fragrance. A dog sighs somewhere. A scribe doodles absent-mindedly in the corner, sketching mango blossoms in the margins of a weathered manuscript. You wonder, briefly, what mangoes mean to you. Maybe they've always been just a fruit, something sticky, sweet, seasonal, but now they're stories, whispers, a mood, a metaphor in a golden coat. A servant passes holding a tray of tiny flasks attar samples labeled with poetic names like Sun Before Rain and Peel Remembered. You try one. It smells like mango and mint, and a sadness you didn't know you were saving. You try another. It smells like someone laughing behind a curtain. The emperor himself arrives barefoot and alone. No fanfare. He walks to the center of the room and kneels before a single mango blossom floating in water. He inhales, then murmurs something so quiet you're not sure he spoke at all. A servant bows. Then he vanishes again, like a scent you only catch once. Back in the corner, someone sings. It's a lullaby about mango trees and lost love. A tune passed down from kitchen staff to courtiers. A melody that outlived 3 emperors and 5 regional governors. You recognize the last line from a pillow you once saw embroidered. If I were a mango, would you wait for me to fall? You're not sure if it's romantic or sad or a deeply patient pickup line. All 3, maybe. You lie back again, eyes fluttering. Your fingers smell like pulp and perfume. Your thoughts are adrift. This room isn't for decisions. It's for undoing, for slipping into something softer than silence. And somewhere beyond the palace walls, a mango falls to the earth with a sound no one hears except maybe you. Here, floating inside its echo, you drift from the scent chamber's sweet fob back into the labyrinthine heart of the palace, where the quiet murmur of distant fountains mingles with the occasional clink of teacups. The night is deepening now, but the emperor's mango obsession is far from over. You find yourself entering the emperor's private tasting room, a place that resembles less a royal chamber and more a sanctuary dedicated to the science of mango appreciation. The walls here are lined with carved jade panels, each depicting mango trees heavy with fruit. The air smells faintly of sandalwood and citrus, a combination that makes your brain twist pleasantly as if it's been invited to a secret party. You notice tiny scales, delicate spoons, and silver knives arranged with obsessive precision. On a low table lie dozens of mango varieties, each labeled meticulously in Sager, Kesar, Desiri, and many others you can't quite pronounce, but find yourself wanting to say aloud anyway, just to taste the words. The Emperor's mango sommelier, a rare and enviable position, is already at work. This person's entire duty is to taste each batch and describe it in poetic terms that balance on the edge between sensory description and romantic confession. Tonight, you're the sommelier's guest apprentice, which means you're allowed to nibble but, more importantly, to observe the rituals. Mainstream historians agree that the mules practiced an early form of gastronomic refinement. Food wasn't just eaten, it was studied, revered, and celebrated. But what often gets overlooked is how intense the mango tasting sessions could get. One record describes a royal tasting that lasted 5 hours and involved 27 varieties of mango, 3 poets, and a rather confused court jester. Here's your quirky tidbit. There was an ancient belief that tasting mangoes in a specific order could influence your mood and fate. Starting with a sour variety was thought to cleanse the palate and spirit, while ending with a sweet one promised dreams of love or glory. Whether this was a clever marketing ploy by fruit sellers or genuine tradition remains a hot scholarly debate. You watch as the sommelier slices into a perfectly ripe Sager. The flesh gleams golden, dripping slightly like liquid sunshine. He inhales deeply, closes his eyes, then takes a bite so slow it feels ritualistic. He mutters something that sounds like nectar of the gods meets the sigh of spring. You try a slice yourself. The sweetness is immediate and vibrant, but there's a subtle tartness beneath it, like a secret joke whispered in your ear. You can't help but smile, imagining centuries of emperors experiencing the same strange, exquisite confusion. Beside you, a poet begins to recite verses inspired by the tasting. O mango, your flesh is a poem, a liquid sun wrapped in green skin. To taste you is to taste the earth, and the fleeting kiss of wind. You glance around at the other guests. Some are scribbling in journals, others closing their eyes as if meditating, and a few simply nodding in silent, reverent agreement. Then you notice something else. See a small silver box on the table, marked with intricate floral designs. Inside it are tiny flakes of mango pulp, preserved with honey and rosewater, used as a rare delicacy or sometimes ground into a powder for medicinal purposes. The court believed that consuming this powder could improve memory or inspire poetic genius, although historians still argue whether these claims were just hopeful folklore. As the tasting session winds down, the emperor himself appears, his presence commanding yet relaxed. He holds a small carved wooden cup filled with mango juice, and before taking a sip, he raises it in a silent toast to the fruit. The room quiets, every eye on him, every breath held. You feel the weight of tradition pressing softly against your skin, a blend of devotion, artistry, and a touch of obsession. This is no ordinary fruit tasting. It's a celebration of time, culture, and sensory wonder that has echoed through generations. The emperor offers you a final sliced piece of mango so perfectly ripe it seems almost to glow. You accept it, and as the sweetness floods your mouth, you understand why mangoes were the secret language of the mule court. They spoke of power and pleasure, patience and poetry, fleeting moments captured forever. You savor the last bite, knowing this tasting room is a kind of sanctuary, a quiet place where the world narrows to the simple joy of fruit and the stories it carries. Outside, the moon hangs low, a silver witness to centuries of mango reverence. You breathe deeply, letting the flavors linger as you step back into the night, feeling oddly full in more ways than one. You wander through the palace halls now, your senses still tingling from the mango tasting. But your journey is far from finished. There's a gentle, almost imperceptible shift in the atmosphere as you approach the emperor's library, an unexpected sanctuary where mangoes and books share a curious, fragrant relationship. The library isn't like the quiet, dusty archives you might imagine. Instead, it's a warm, fragrant nest of wooden shelves and silk cushions, where the smell of old paper mingles with a subtle, lingering mango aroma. Somehow, this scent isn't accidental. It's the result of centuries-old ritual. Mango leaves were often used as bookmarks, their delicate scent infusing the pages with a touch of the orchard's soul. You settle on a cushion beside a low table strewn with manuscripts, illuminated by the soft glow of a nearby lamp. A court scholar, a thin man with spectacles balanced precariously on his nose, offers you a scroll. It's filled with poetry, recipes, and musings about mangoes, written in an elegant nostalgic script. Mainstream history tells us the mules were passionate patrons of literature and art, commissioning works that blended Persian, Indian, and Islamic traditions. But here's the quirky side. Mangoes weren't just a subject for poems and paintings, they were often coded symbols in love letters, secret messages, and royal edicts. One famous manuscript includes a poem where each line begins with the letters spelling out the word mango in Persian. Historians still argue about the exact meaning of these hidden mango references. Were they innocent metaphors for sweetness and fertility, or veiled political allegories? Maybe both. As you trace the delicate curves of the script, your fingers brush against a pressed mango blossom tucked into the pages. Its faded petals still hold a whisper of fragrance, a ghost of blossoms past. You wonder if the original reader ever paused to inhale that scent, imagining summer orchards or stolen moments in the palace gardens. Nearby, a young poet recites softly, "In every mango, a story sleeps, of sunlit days and secret keeps, a language spoken leaf to leaf, of longing sweet and quiet grief." You realize that mangoes are woven deeply into the mule psyche, not just as fruit, but as symbols of time, memory, and desire. One scholar points to a passage describing a ritual where an emperor would write letters on mango leaves, believed to carry blessings from the orchard itself. Whether this was practical or purely symbolic remains a topic of debate, but it highlights how mangoes infused even the most cerebral corners of court life. As night deepens, you glance up from the scroll to see the emperor quietly reading across the room, a slice of mango balanced on a delicate porcelain plate beside him. He's absorbed in a manuscript that describes the art of perfuming mangoes with rose petals and saffron, a practice you recall from earlier stories tonight. A servant approaches, offering a cup of warm mango tea infused with cardamom and honey. You sip it slowly, savoring the unexpected comfort and the way the flavors seem to carry the echo of sun-drenched afternoons. You feel as if you're suspended between worlds tangible and the intangible, fruit and poetry, history and myth. Here in this library, mangoes are more than food, they're bridges between senses, stories, and souls. As you rise to leave, you catch the soft rustle of pages and the distant hum of a lute. You think about all the mangoes you've smelled, tasted, and imagined tonight, and how each one holds a universe within its golden flesh. You step back into the cool night air, the palace behind you alive with the quiet magic of mango dreams. The cool night air greets you as you step out of the library, but the palace's mango magic isn't finished yet. You find yourself drawn toward the kitchen gardens, a secret place where mango trees grow alongside fragrant herbs and rare flowers, tended by gardeners who seem to move like whispers in the dark. Here, the mango's journey begins long before it reaches the emperor's table or his scented chambers. You watch a gardener gently shake a tree, coaxing down the ripest fruit like it's a treasure, not just a piece of fruit. The ground below is carpeted with mango leaves, carefully gathered to dry and later used for everything from medicinal poultices to royal incense. Mainstream historians often describe mule gardens as expressions of paradise on earth, meticulously designed to combine beauty, utility, and symbolism. Mango trees were central to these gardens not just for their fruit but because they represented fertility, prosperity, and the cycle of life itself. Your quirky tidbit: Some gardeners believed that mango trees could hear the songs sung beneath their branches, and that singing to the trees would make the fruit sweeter. While that sounds like a charming superstition, modern botanists are still intrigued by how sound vibrations might affect plant growth, though they're far from a consensus. You pause as a gardener begins to sing softly, a melodic tune that floats through the air like a prayer. You feel a strange sense of peace, as if the trees themselves are listening. Nearby, a heated debate brews between two gardeners over the best method to protect mangoes from pesky birds and squirrels. One swears by netting woven from silk threads. The other insists on the crocodile dung method, an old remedy believed to repel pests because of its pungent smell. Historians still argue whether this practice was effective or just a royal prank gone too far. As you wander deeper into the garden, you come upon a small pavilion where mango leaves are being crushed and mixed with oils to produce fragrant bombs. Here is heady with scents: mango, jasmine, sandalwood, and something else you can't quite place, like a memory of a rainstorm in spring. A young apprentice hands you a small vial of mango leaf extract, explaining it was traditionally used to soothe the skin and calm the mind after a long day of royal duties. You dab a drop on your wrist, and the leaf smell is bright and fresh, like a mango just picked from the tree at dawn. You notice that even the garden stones are arranged carefully to direct the flow of water and air in ways that encourage the best fruit growth. It's as if the entire space breathes and moves in harmony, tuned to the mango's rhythms. As you look up at the dark canopy above, you remember the tales of emperors who believed their fortunes were tied to the health of the mango orchard. Should a good harvest foretold a prosperous reign, while a poor season could mean trouble ahead. Whether this was royal superstition or sincere belief remains a matter of historical debate. A gentle breeze stirs the leaves, and for a moment, you swear you hear the softest whisper, like the mango trees themselves are sharing a secret just for you. You follow the whispering breeze away from the gardens and into the softer, dimly lit corridors of the palace, where the evening's events have begun to shift from the sensory to the social. Here, the emperor's mango obsession takes a more public form: mango feast, an event both lavish and strangely intimate, where fruit becomes a stage for power, pleasure, and pageantry. The feast unfolds in a grand hall, lit by hundreds of oil lamps whose flames flicker like golden fireflies. The walls are draped with tapestries embroidered with mango motifs, golden fruit hanging heavy on embroidered branches, surrounded by fluttering birds and delicate flowers. You notice how every detail, from the silverware to the serving platters, seems chosen to complement the fruit's glowing hues. As you take your place among nobles and courtiers, the emperor presides at the head of the table, his face calm but eyes sharp, scanning the scene like a conductor leading a delicate symphony of taste and etiquette. Mainstream historians tell us that Mughal banquets were more than just meals, they were political theater. Food, especially prized mangoes, was a tool of diplomacy and display, demonstrating wealth, control, and refined taste. The emperor's mango feast was a carefully choreographed event where each course and each gesture carried meaning. Your quirky tidbit: the feast often included mango-themed poetry contests, where poets competed to compose verses inspired by the fruit. Some poets even crafted riddles where the answer was always mango, testing the wit and knowledge of the guests. Historians still debate whether these contests were genuinely competitive, or just playful diversions staged by the court to entertain the emperor. You watch as a platter is brought out, piled high with slices of the rarest mangoes, their juice glistening like liquid gold. Courtiers dip their fingers in rose-scented water before touching the fruit, a ritual designed to honor both the fruit and the company. Nearby, a musician plucks a sitar, the gentle strings weaving melodies that seem to echo the fruit's sweetness. The room hums with soft conversation and the clink of delicate porcelain. You overhear a whispered debate between two nobles about the best mango variety for a particular dish. Should it be raw for a spicy chutney or fully ripe for a fragrant dessert? The answer is never simple. and historians still argue about the authenticity of certain recipes attributed to the mule kitchen. The emperor raises a glass of mango lassi, its creamy texture and subtle tang a perfect balance to the richness of the evening. He toasts to prosperity, health, and the fleeting sweetness of liffy, an elegant nod to the mango's symbolism as much as its flavor. As the feast progresses, the mood softens. Laughter spills over the low murmur of conversation. Stories are exchanged about mango hunts in far-flung orchards, the joy of discovering a new variety, and the melancholy of mango seasons ending too soon. You realize the mango feast is more than a celebration of fruit, it's a celebration of time, memory, and community. It's about savoring moments before they slip away, much like the juicy fruit melting on your tongue. As the night deepens, you feel a profound sense of connection to the emperors, the poets, the gardeners, and all who have gathered here in mango's golden light. It's a moment of shared humanity wrapped in the sweet scent of history. You lean back, savoring your final slice, and wonder what stories tomorrow's mango season will bring. You leave the echoes of the feast behind and drift toward the quieter, more reflective spaces of the palace, where mangoes find yet another role of their presence woven into the fabric of mule medicine and mysticism. Here fruit meets folklore, healing, and a dash of alchemy, painting a fascinating picture of how emperors sought balance through nature's bounty. The chamber you enter smells of herbs, dried flowers, and a faint undertone of mango peel simmering in oil. Shelves lined with glass jars hold powders, pastes, and tinctures, many infused with mango extracts. A court physician, clad in embroidered robes, gestures to a scroll detailing the health benefits attributed to mangoes, cooling the blood, aiding digestion, and even calming the restless mind. Mainstream historians acknowledge that the mules integrated traditional Ayurvedic and Unani practices, often blending them in novel ways. Mangoes were a crucial ingredient, not just for their nutrition but for their supposed medicinal properties, believed to restore balance to the body's humors. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some remedies called for mango seeds to be ground and mixed with saffron and honey to treat melancholy condition the court took very seriously, especially given the stresses of ruling an empire. Whether these remedies actually worked or were placebo rituals is still debated among scholars. You watch the physician prepare a concoction using mango pulp and rosewater, explaining it was often prescribed to help emperors relax after a day of heavy decision-making. You're offered a sip. It's sweet, floral, and oddly calming, like a lullaby in liquid form. Nearby, a mystic whispers about mango leaves power to ward off evil spirits and bad luck. This belief was so strong that mango branches were often hung over doorways during festivals and important ceremonies. Whether this was superstition or symbolic protection, historians still discuss the spiritual significance of mangoes in mule culture. You notice an embroidered tapestry depicting a celestial mango tree, its branches stretching toward the stars, a poetic representation of the fruit's perceived connection to cosmic harmony and divine favor. The physician recites a verse. In mango's heart, the healer's art, a sweetness born to soothe the heart. Through flesh and leaf, through seed and skin, the balm of life flows softly in. You feel the chamber's calm seep into your bones, a gentle reminder that for the mules, mangoes were more than indulgence, they were a bridge between body, mind, and spirit. As you leave the room, the night feels softer, as if the mango's magic has lent you a quiet blessing. The palace outside is cloaked in shadows, the scent of mango and jasmine lingering like a promise. You take a deep breath, carrying the fruit's warmth with you, ready to drift toward rest. The palace has grown hushed now, shadows lengthening and folding into each other as the night approaches its deepest hour. Your journey through the mango-soaked world of the Mughal emperors is drawing to a close. But there's one last, almost secret space you must visit, a small, dimly lit chamber of reflection, where mangoes serve as symbols of wisdom, patience, and the slow passage of time. This room is simple yet elegant, far removed from the opulence of the feasting halls and perfumed chambers. Here, wooden shelves hold scrolls and books on philosophy, astronomy, and poetry, while a single mango tree grows quietly in a large ceramic pot, its branches heavy with golden fruit. You settle onto a low divan, the soft cushion cradling you as the faint scent of mango blossoms drifts through the air. The emperor, now a more contemplative figure, often spent afternoons here, pondering not just the sweetness of mangoes, but their metaphorical resonansive way their ripening mirrored the unfolding of life itself. Mainstream historians often emphasize the mule's love of art and science, but they sometimes miss the quieter, meditative aspects of court life, moments like this, where fruit and philosophy intertwine. Here's your quirky tidbit. The emperor is said to have had a favorite mango tree whose fruit he believed held special powers of insight. It was called the philosopher's mango, and while no one knows exactly why it earned that name, some scholars suggest it might have been a symbol for the emperor's hope that wisdom, like mangoes, ripens in its own perfect time. Historians still debate whether the emperor's reverence for mangoes extended into actual philosophical doctrine or was more poetic symbolism. But the peaceful aura of this room says it might have been a bit of both. You watch the sun's last light filter through the latticework, casting intricate shadows across the floor. The mango tree's leaves shimmer softly, and you find yourself caught in the stillness, the moment stretching out like the slow ripening of a perfect mango. A court poet's whispered lines float through your mind. Time is a mango, slowly sweet, each moment falling, ripe and fleet. In patience, wisdom's fruit is found. In silence, echoes soft and sound. As you sit in this quiet space, you feel a gentle peace settle over you. The mango's journey from orchard to feast, from scent to healing balm, from symbol to story has been a slow unfolding, much like the night itself. You close your eyes, savoring the lingering fragrance, the weight of centuries resting lightly on your shoulders. The palace around you breathes in harmony with your own quiet rhythm, and you drift into a calm awareness, wrapped in the golden warmth of mango dreams. You take one last deep breath, carrying with you the sweet, soft echo of an empire's love for a simple, perfect fruit. Now, as promised, a gentle wind down to ease you softly into rest. The night wraps around you like a soft shawl, cooling and comforting, each breath a quiet invitation to slow down. Imagine the mango trees, their branches heavy with fruit, swaying gently in the warm breeze under a starry sky. The sweet scent of mango blossoms drifts lazily through the air, like a whispered secret shared just between you and the night. Let your thoughts float, light and easy, carried away on the soft currents of memory and imagination. The world narrows to a single golden fruit, its sweetness lingering, its gentle promise of patience and quiet joy. As your eyelids grow heavy, remember the slow ripening of mangoes, the delicate art of waiting, and the quiet moments that make history soft and kind. You are held in that timeless stillness now, a gentle echo in the vast orchard of night. Sleep deeply and dream sweetly.